All right, and welcome to the Friday edition of Sidelines. Gordon Ford here with me, Rob Brown. On a Friday afternoon, we'll be with you until 5 o'clock. And got a big show today. And we're going to have Buck Bellew, former Georgia quarterback of the 1980 national champions, who, man, I tell you, one of the most famous players in Georgia history. Larry Munson, Lindsey Scott, Buck Bellew, they'll live forever. We'll have Philip Marshall from Auburn Undercover, former sports editor of the Huntsville Times, and he's grown up covering Southeastern Conference, Auburn, Alabama, longtime writer. At 4, we will have Bob Kessling on with the Big Orange Report covering Tennessee, and 4:30, Tommy Tuberville. But Gordon's got some news that is very interesting about the Florida State job, and Gordon is the investigative reporter. Jesse Waters, get out of the way. It's Gordon's world.
You know what? I'm hearing down there that unless they get Stoops from Kentucky, that they're going to hire Odell Haggins.
Yeah.
And right now, they want to keep Bryles there, his son.
Bryles' son.
Yeah. And they want to keep him as the offensive coordinator, make him coach in waiting. Helms, he has no desire to be the head coach long term. But he is 4-0 right now. And the thing with Willie Taggart, it's cost him $17 million. And to hire another coach, they can go cheap by hiring Helms and keep what they've got there. That's what we're hearing as of right now. Arkansas job, I really haven't heard a whole lot about that. Of course, you're hearing Mike Norvell's over there interested in that job. And I don't know exactly, but, he's put out stuff about being at Florida State. He hasn't even been considered down there from what my sources are telling me.
Odell Haggins was the interim coach a couple of years ago when Jimbo Fisher left toward the end of the season. They had a couple of games left. Haggins played at Florida State. And, they also brought back Mickey Andrews a few years ago as a defensive consultant.
Yeah.
And Florida State, that job, Gordon's one of the best jobs, and Tim Littlefield does a great job of covering them. Why would Florida State?
Today, yeah, but I'm just,
Yeah, I know.
This other side.
Exactly. Tell me this. Your opinion, Odell Haggins, he's a great defensive lineman. He's a hell of a recruiter. How many schools out there, other than Nick Saban, who left LSU, went to the NFL 2 years, came back to college? But name me another head coach in the top 4, top 10, who was a program head coach at an elite program and left to go to another elite program.
I can't think off the top of my head.
What did they call Gomer Pyle?
Well, the last time,
Gomer Pyle. Look at him.
If you go back and look, when Paul Dietzel went to Navy, that's way back, and then ended up going to South Carolina and ruining their program there. But he's the only guy off the top of my head I can think of. I mean, it used to happen back in the day. Bear Bryant was at Kentucky, went to A&M, then went to Alabama. But I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I know Johnny Majors went back to Tennessee. That's one I can think of.
That was a big one.
And then he went back to Pitt. When he was fired at Tennessee or asked to leave, he ended up going back to Pitt, and it just didn't happen there for him. And then I'm just trying to think. I off the top of my head, I just really don't know. I know Paul Brown back in the day coached Ohio State and then went to coach the Cleveland Browns. So, who can you think of?
Well, Coach Bryant, when Mama called, came back in '58 to Alabama to replace J.B. Ears Whitworth, who most Auburn people thought was doing a really good job at Alabama. He'd won 3 or 4 games the previous 3 years, but it just doesn't happen. And I think that, look at Mario Cristobal. Played at Miami, and I want to let's ask Tommy Tuberville about him. Think about that defensive line he had. Mario Cristobal, now the head coach at Oregon, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. What talent. It's just amazing the talent that came out of there. But look at the top 4 programs. Ohio State promoted Ryan Day, offensive coordinator. Clemson, Dabo Swinney. Everybody made fun of him and said he looked like Gomer Pyle. He should double as Gomer Pyle. You take a look at Georgia. Kirby Smart was a coordinator. And then look, at LSU, Ed Orgeron. People thought that guy was a living brain donor. I thought he was a coach. I always have believed Ed Orgeron was a heck of a coach. He's smart. He's got great mentoring.
And he has charisma.
Yeah. What does he always say? Go Tigers.
Yep, go Tigers.
Yeah, and he's a lot of fun to watch. But he's smart because he went and got Joe Brady from the New Orleans Saints. How big a deal is that? When we look back 5 years from now, is that going to be a seismic shift that LSU will stay like this, or is this just a short-term fix?
No, I don't believe it's a short-term fix. Another thing, too, I mean, and we've talked about this before, the game today, it's all the spread. And you look at pro football, and I think we had this conversation yesterday. The game has changed.
Yeah.
And your drop-back passer quarterback that can't move, he's almost extinct. And everybody else is moving. I mean, you look back in the late 70s until about the mid-80s, everybody was in the I formation and handing the ball off. And everybody was running. Look at the NFL offenses. I mean, they're like quarterbacks throwing for 5,000 yards. Back then, you threw for 2,800. You were doing good.
You did. But look at the offensive linemen that are coming out of college football today. They're getting in the NFL, and a lot of the NFL coaches are saying these guys, they're running these spread offenses. They're not that physical. They're not mentally tough. And I think it's hard to find elite level offensive linemen on the college level. So you've got to have a quarterback that can run for his life because he has to.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, but you look at some guys who go to the pros and have some success are those guys from USC. They've always had a pro offense. So, but look at dudes that played for Mike Leach. I mean, not many of them really pan out.
Patrick Mahomes is the guy that, but he didn't play for Leach, was already gone.
No, he played for Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah.
Now, Cliff Kingsbury had him doing multiple things. I don't know if you had a chance to see Patrick Mahomes in college. He was just a dominant force. He could run, throw. I mean, and that's why the Kansas City Chiefs brought him in. I mean, he was more versatile than the guys drafted over him.
Yeah, and finding a guy like Peyton Manning, people try to act like Peyton Manning was Kalijah, the wooden Indian in the backfield. Peyton could run. Peyton's a hell of an athlete.
So can Tom Brady.
And Peyton's father could run, couldn't he? I mean, Archie Manning, at the time Archie Manning played quarterback, no one had ever seen a quarterback that could run like that.
And throw off the run.
Yeah, people forget. And our guest in just a minute, former Georgia quarterback Buck Bellew, played down at Valdosta. He's the only quarterback, I think, in Valdosta high school history to start all 4 years in high school. And, he broke his leg in 1979 at the end of the year in the Auburn game. Got sacked for a safety in the end zone. Got hit by Frank Warren and Freddie Smith. But this guy was a heck of a quarterback, great athlete. We don't see that as much anymore. Now they're quarterbacks and they're 24/7, 365, focusing on football. Buck Bellew was a first or second round draft pick in the baseball draft too.
Yeah, he was really good.
Remember him?
He actually played for the Jacksonville, whatever they were, in the USFL, I believe.
He did. Yeah. Well, look, if we're wrong, he's about to correct us. I can assure you of that. But Gordon, question now. Looking at the quarterback position, we have a lot of coaches and guests on this show. Have we dumbed the position down to where now a guy like Kyler Murray, who's barely 5'10" with the afro, can be the number one pick in the draft when he couldn't even get the starting position at Texas A&M?
I still have watched him in the pros. He looks like a midget out there.
Yeah.
Then the bottom line is he is not a dominant player or never will be. He's too small. Jackson, who's at the Ravens, I mean, that guy, he's big and can move. I'm shocked he's as good as he is because he did not throw the ball well.
Well, he was another one of those South Florida kids down around Miami that escaped Florida State, Miami. You can't get everybody in the state to stay there. I understand that.
And he went to Louisville.
Yeah, went to Louisville, won the Heisman Trophy. But look at the Heisman Trophy winners. Johnny Manziel, no pro career.
That's because of his head.
Yeah, you're right.
But guy could play.
Oh, no, he was a baller. No question about that. But you look at the toughness that's required to win a championship. That's something, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you're weak mentally and physically, you're going to break down at crunch time more often than not.
But he did off the wall crazy stuff. I'll just put it that way.
He was too big into going to the beach and taking selfies with 15 women, chugging beer. And he set himself up for failure.
I still believe if he had his head on right, he'd be in the league today.
Probably right. Now, next question. Baker Mayfield. You look at all these quarterbacks coming out of Oklahoma. Now you got Kyler Murray. And you may have another Heisman Trophy winner this year. I don't think it's going to happen because of Joe Burrow at LSU. But Jalen Hurts is going to be invited to New York, okay?
Oh, yeah.
And Oklahoma, just whoever they fit in there, he's one of the front runners for the Heisman Trophy. It's a system. They don't play defense out there. They beat Iowa State a couple of weeks ago by 1 point, and they had to come from 31-3. Biggest comeback in Oklahoma history for a victory last week. I don't think Oklahoma is one of the top 4 teams in the country.
No, sir.
Okay, good.
I'll tell you another thing, too, what you just mentioned. Let's look at Baker Mayfield. Good first year as a rookie.
Yep.
Right now, struggling. Talking smack, can't back it up.
Yeah.
Okay? Look at the Cleveland Browns. First of the year, and I know we're a college station here. Look at them. Everyone said they're going to win the Super Bowl. They got all these players. Baker can't deliver. Not getting it done. Got Myles Garrett. They got everybody you can think of on that team. Talent galore.
Yep.
And they can't do it. And look at Kyler Murray. Like I said, I mean, Rob, he'd have to stand on a box to be as tall as you.
Well, you're 6'9", okay?
No, I'm not.
Oh, 7 feet. I'm sorry. No, but you're right. I watched. What I like to tell people is, if you want to know if a kid is likely to do well in the NFL, look how he plays against Alabama or Clemson, Georgia, LSU, Auburn, Florida State. These programs with elite front 7 talent on defense. Again, case in point. If I was in a court of law, I would put this up on the screen and let the whole courtroom see it, especially the jurors. After 1 quarter of play, Alabama 21, Oklahoma 0. Total stats, Oklahoma 0 yards, Alabama 194. Okay, they got some garbage yardage and some garbage points later in the game when it didn't matter. NFL teams, they make a lot of mistakes. Nothing personal against Kyler Murray. Baker Mayfield, you're right. After about a year and a half or so, you figure this stuff out. People have already caught up to it. And then fundamentally, these guys don't have the tools and the coaching background and their lunchbox and their toolbox to be a big-time, long-term NFL quarterback. And that's where we're going to get in a lot of trouble in the NFL, bringing in guys like this from these spread offenses that didn't take the snap from center, took it from the shotgun. I know everybody does it, but it's what's happening to pro football. Tom Brady, that's why he's still out there at 45 years old.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, one of the best guys I think is a pro prospect is Scott Herbert at Oregon. That guy's the real deal. Can really play, you know?
Well, the guy at Oregon's got maybe the best offensive line in college football. The Pac-12's problem
Throw
is
the ball tall. He's got it all.
Well, Mario Cristobal is building the Oregon football team a lot like the model at Alabama. They don't have the talent at their backyard disposal that Alabama does, but Oregon can recruit nationally. That is a national brand because of the Nike connection. And Phil Knight, an alumnus of the University of Oregon, has given them over $250 million over the last 15 years. Cristobal is he's a polished coach, great recruiter. Was on Nick Saban's staff for a couple of years recently. He knows what a big-time player looks like, and Oregon is going, in my opinion, I think Oregon's going to make the playoff. I give them about a 75-80% chance of making it.
But before we get off of Oregon, think about the way they've done things. They have constantly promoted assistants who did good jobs.
Yeah.
Like Bellotti, they did.
Mike Bellotti, 14 years as a coach.
Yeah.
And then Chip Kelly, 4 years as a coach. Let's go to our guest. Joining us now is former Georgia quarterback and the host of the Buck and Kincaid Show on 680 The Fan in Atlanta every day. Buck Ballou from Valdosta, Georgia, Titletown. Welcome to Sidelines.
Hey man, good to be with you guys. I'm a little excited here tonight. We got Valdosta High up in the Atlanta area, and they're playing right down the street from where I'm living here. So excited about going out and seeing the old high school play tonight.
There's a little bit of interest in high school football in Georgia, isn't there?
Yeah, Metro Atlanta's just full of big-time athletes, and they play a pretty good brand of football in South Georgia too.
Oh yeah.
Proud to say that. But yeah, here in the Deep South, there are a lot of good high school football players running around.
There are, and when you came to Georgia in '78 out of Valdosta High School, weren't you the only quarterback they ever had to start all 4 years in high school?
Well, yeah, that's on the resume, I guess. But I tell you, that first year, what happened was the starting quarterback, right before the season started, quit the team. Second string quarterback sprained an ankle. Next thing I know, the coach is saying, "Baloo, get on in there." And I tell you, I had to be the worst quarterback in the region that year. So I'm not real proud of that one, but proud of those last three, and all those guys that those former teammates. I think about them a lot.
Tell me something, Buck. You played in the USFL for a while, and we were sitting here trying to think of the name of that team you're on. It was Jacksonville something. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, it was the Bulls.
That's what
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I got this thing. I played with Herschel, obviously, that won the Heisman, and I played with two running backs in Jacksonville in the USFL that had won the Heisman. Too, Archie Griffin, who I just admired so much back when I was a middle school guy watching Ohio State play. Man, he was just phenomenal. He won the Heisman back-to-back, so it's great to play with Arch. And then also Mike Rozier, who won the Heisman.
He was there, yeah.
Out of Nebraska, was also with the Bulls there. So that was a lot of fun.
I was trying to think of who y'all's coach was. I want to say it was Lindy Infante.
It was, and Lindy passed away last year. And let me tell you, I still have the playbook, and he was one of the great offensive minds out there, and just was so lucky to have been around for a couple of years and learned a lot about the game of football, the pro game with that passing attack that Lindy Infante had.
Buck, let's go back in time a little bit. You're about 3 years older than I am, and I'm an Auburn grad, and I remember the 1979, the end of the year in the Auburn game. You broke your leg there, and you came back the next year, and Georgia was dialed in from the beginning. You're on the road, up in Knoxville, down 15-2, was it? And I remember this, and you were on the team, but I can remember having my little white transistor radio. I was at a University of Memphis game at the time, and I remember Herschel didn't start that game, and I think he signed with Georgia on Easter or Palm Sunday afternoon. It was kind of late, and y'all had some pretty good backs on that team, but kind of from there, everything changed for Georgia. I'm a huge Vince Dooley fan. I talked to Ralph Jordan a lot, and they're so close with Vince Dooley and his family and his wife Barbara. And I think if you looked up Southern Gentleman in the dictionary, there'd be his picture. You played for the man, but kind of talk about that moment, how that changed yours and a lot of people's lives.
Well, let me just say, look, I didn't break my leg. Auburn broke my leg that day. They snapped that thing like a dry twig, man. It was like it was the first play of the game for us. So, man, that brought some reality into just how fragile, a career can be. But,
yeah.
At the time we were thinking, the nucleus there, we were thinking, hey, man, we got enough talent. We just need a running back if we're going to run this I formation. And so we were lacking, a guy like a Herschel Walker that stepped in and really solidified the team and gave us that featured running back that you could show off in that I formation at the time. And he was awesome, and he made that debut that day against Tennessee you're talking about, where we were down at halftime, and I'll never forget Mike Cavan, who's Kirby Smart's right-hand man right now over at Georgia. Mike Cavan was the running back coach at the time, and I heard him telling the offensive coordinator, I was a pretty good eavesdropper. Still I think I can do some of that, but I heard Cavan telling the offensive coordinator, George Hafner, look, we got to get Herschel in the game here. He needs to start the second half. And, I think Hafner's response was something like, well, I'm not going to tell him I'm going to stick the freshman in there down 15-2. And Cavan says, well, I will then. Cavan went right over there and told Vince Dooley. And, he started the second half, and the rest is sort of history from that point.
Yeah, y'all were a tough team. And, I want Gordon and I both probably have a lot of questions, but the thing I remember the most about that team is how many times that y'all had a loss seemed imminent, and you found excuses to win. That comes from great coaching and tough practices, doesn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of good players, man. That defense that year, Irk Russell, how could he not be in the College Football Hall of Fame? I just can't get over it. Some technicality about, only 9 years as a head coach at Georgia Southern and not the 10. But he's one of the greatest of all times. And look, that defense that year, a lot of people talk about Herschel and Lindsey and that kind of thing, and they were awesome. But the defense forced 44 turnovers that year. I mean, my goodness, 44 turnovers, man. We got the ball in great field position, a lot of, points off turnovers, things like that. So, yeah, that team was deep, and we've got some guys in the College Football Hall of Fame off that team. Scott Warner, cornerback, who just was locking down, making big plays, it seemed like every weekend. He's the latest to go in there. Terry Ho has made it into the Hall of Fame, and Herschel, of course. And, so that team was really special.
Buck, one of the things you watch today in college football is the spread offense. And you look back when you played, and it seemed like nobody really went out of the shotgun back then. And it was all kind of I formation, running the ball. What do you see as that's a change, but what do you see the difference back then than the game is today?
Well, the size of the players, that you look at that great wall of Pittman, as they call it, at Georgia. Those guys are averaging 330, 340, something like that. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's the size of those line of scrimmage players is so much different. But it's just as trendy as anything else out there. There'll be some kind of defense, and hopefully it's going to be Georgia's against LSU. It's going to show the ability to lock down on all these RPOs we're seeing out of this air raid spread thing that LSU's running really well with Joe Burrow right now. And Georgia's going to have to find a way to slow it down. Maybe Kirby's got some answers on that. But it just trends from, one formation, and then they figure out a way to defend it, and then the offense has got to adjust and come up with something else. Things like that. So it's constantly changing. The size of the players stands out to me as the biggest difference.
Buck, looking at the SEC, it's been, I guess, since 2008 when a team from the SEC East won the SEC. And this year, Georgia, a lot of people are assuming LSU is going to go in there and run away with it. Just like a lot of people after Georgia lost at home in overtime to South Carolina, that Florida would kill them. And I for one, was like, no, I wouldn't say that, because you give Kirby Smart and that staff 2 weeks, they'll be ready to play Georgia. And they dominated that game. They won 24-17, but they didn't let Florida run the ball. And looking at the players that Georgia has, of course, the facilities, the tradition, you've got it. It's all there. What is it about Kirby Smart that from the moment he got there, he began to attract big-time talent? And granted, Georgia's the 4th or 5th most talent-rich state in America, but he's got something about him. I know people that have been around him, a charisma, Elvis-like.
Kirby, his dad was a high school football coach here in Georgia, in South Georgia, and so, look, and as an assistant coach, both at Valdosta State, and as he moved up, ended up, with Saban for a minute there, and his obviously his coaching tree grew, but just the contacts from his dad being a high school coach and him working the state as a recruiter at some of the other SEC schools, it made him the perfect guy to take over at Georgia. And I've been screaming from Stone Mountain here in Atlanta for about 5 years, hoping to see this happen, going over to Alabama and bringing him on in. But what he is so focused on is a couple of things. One is recruiting. Every decision he makes, they really consider the consequences as far as recruiting goes. And, that you're trying to get the best players out there, and they're recruiting as well as anybody. here over the last 3 years. So, he's focused on the recruiting at all times. And then he's serious about winning. And that sets the tone with these guys. He's serious, man. I mean, there's no time to be fooling around, basically. We're trying to win football games here and there. So that's what I love about him.
Yeah, he's an incredible coach. And watching him when he was at Alabama, and you have to wonder, he learned a lot from Nick Saban. But when you've got the state of Georgia right there for recruiting, about 180 kids a year will sign Division I scholarships, and it's just incredible. To me, I think the best football in Georgia historically is where you're from, down in South Georgia on the Florida-Georgia line. Towns like Bainbridge and Tifton and Moultrie and Waycross and Blakely County and just you name all these towns. And I lived in Columbus, Buck, when I graduated from Auburn. I worked for Channel 3 in 89 and 90. And getting to cover high school football around that area within about 85, 100 miles was a real treat. And you look at the defensive linemen, and not everywhere in the country produces these kind of kids. It makes such a difference. And I think one of the most underrated or unheralded members of the 1980 national championship team at Georgia was Eddie Meat Cleaver Weaver. I mean, he was tough as nails, but Georgia gets them every year. Alabama, Florida, Auburn, LSU. Tennessee's trying to get back into Georgia, and I think they're going to do it with Jeremy Pruitt. He's a heck of a recruiter. Tell me what you think is the possibility of getting rid of the divisions in the SEC and having a lot of these old rivalries resume, or at least where everybody plays everybody while they're there and makes at least one trip to every visiting team, every other team's stadium in their 4-year career, and just let the top 2 teams play in Atlanta to keep the championship? Or do you think we'll just do away with it altogether? I'm just curious what you think about it. You're in Atlanta. Atlanta is the media center of America when it comes to college football.
Well, I really think the next big step here we're going to see is the expansion of the college football playoffs. We're going to see this thing get bigger. 8 teams probably is what we're looking at. And look, the evidence out there is all these top 10 programs now are looking to improve their schedules out in the near future. All these home and homes with other Power 5 conference teams, eliminating these Goliath matchups for the small schools that leave with a good check. That's going to be eliminated. We're seeing it right now, and there's a lot of talk with Georgia signing up all these home and homes, the last one with Ohio State. So to me, that's the big move here. We may see the SEC expand, but I think the big thing here is the next big step is going to be expanding the playoffs from 4 teams to 8.
What would that do to regular season interest? I've always wondered, what if in the 11th and 12th games of the year you had an 8 or a 16-team playoff, and some of the top teams began to bench their best players to give them rest, like in the NFL? I worry about that cheapening some of these games, any of these games, but especially some of the bigger, more traditional rivalries.
Yeah, but, I guess you would have to win a certain amount of those games in the regular season to get in. So, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room.
Yeah.
In there as the teams get bigger. But, I think the whole thing to get started was set up for controversy. My gosh, the 4 invitations for the college football playoffs, and you got 5 power conferences. So it's set up for controversy right now. And it makes sense to enlarge that to a bigger number, where you can include the 5 conference champions in the Power 5, maybe one of the wild card, couple of wild cards in there, and then go to the group of 5 and take the champion out of that level and get the Cinderella storyline working.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Okay, last thing, I know you've got to go, and we've had a great time with you, but give me your 4 teams that you think will be there when the playoff rankings, the top 4 that are going to play for the national championship.
So you're asking me what they will do?
Yeah. Not what you will do, but what they will do, because I think I'm going to probably agree with what you're going to say.
Well, I think what they'll do is we're going to see Clemson go undefeated. the defending champs and the ACC champs. So give them an invitation. Ohio State will be in. See them winning the Big Ten and taking care of things there. LSU to me, I think, is probably in, even with a loss. So you're looking at 4 or 5 teams that are competing for that fifth spot. I know right now it doesn't look like it, but I bet you're going to see Oklahoma maybe jump all these teams up to that 4th spot before it's all over.
What about Oregon? You think that they can do it?
Well, Oregon and Utah right now, they're giving you the impression with them at 6 and 7, right?
Yeah.
Where those teams are, they're giving you the impression they favor the Pac-12 champ to be. But I think at the end of the day, you might see Jalen Hurts and what he's done with the Sooners. If they can come out of the Big 12 with 1 loss and cooking and looking good, I think maybe you're going to see them jump Alabama, Georgia. Everybody's going to pick LSU to beat them in the SEC title game. So let's just go with that.
All right.
For the sake of this conversation, you got 3 or 4 teams out there battling for it.
Yeah.
So, I just think maybe the Big 12, but right now it looks like they're going to take that Pac-12 champ.
That will be, if that happens, there's going to be a lot of, but that's, again, what keeps the interest in college football is there's always 3 or 4 teams historically that have claimed a national championship from some service or another. Buck, thank you so much. And for people that are down there in Atlanta, in the area, I was down there this past weekend, 680 The Fan. Y'all are right there in the Battery by the Braves' new stadium. I saw your studio. That is really impressive. But Buck and Kincaid, you're on every day for 4 hours?
Yeah, we're on, we call it the coveted noon to 3 slot. We don't have to deal with that traffic in the morning or the afternoon. So that's a wonderful thing. And 680thefan.com. Get some more information there. The app, you can get the app and listen anytime. But we're in our 20th year, man. Very pleased. Just thrilled to be a part of it like you guys.
Hey, longest running sports show in Atlanta for a reason. You're damn good at what you do. Please, we want to get you back on the show with us again this year. You bring back a lot of great memories. My junior year in high school, remember it like it was yesterday. And we're going to definitely want to have you back. And thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Buck. All right, we're Sidelines. We're going to be here 901-452-3094, 901-324-7490. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. Check us out.
Sitting out here on the hood of this truck, looking up at a caramel-colored sunset sky. Checking my watch, doing the math in my head, counting backwards to when you said goodbye. Will those runway lights get bright?
Where did you get that show here? Where are the best liquor deals?
It's Grandma runs over Santa's reindeer. Don't leave that deer alone there in the street. Load him up and take him down to Dino's, where they can process him into some real fine meat.
You know what my man cave needs?
What's that, Rob?
A giant screen TV with surround sound.
You should go to gaddishome.com.
That's right. They can do all of this without costing us a fortune. They can also put in the security cameras and outdoor lighting you've been wanting forever.
Well, what are you waiting for?
Hey, check them out at gaddishome.com or on our website, sidelines.live. That's Gaddis Home Innovation.
Since 1907, one name has remained at the top in the Mid-South when it comes to property and casualty insurance: Jameson and Fisher. Located on the historic square in Covington, Tennessee, CEO Ed Kaiser, a former president and active member of the Insurance of Tennessee, and his team are proud sponsors of the Big Arms Report. Email or stop by for home, auto, RV, renters, ATV, motorcycle, any of your property and casualty needs. Or check them out on the website at jamesonandfisher.com.
nearly all his life. You know it drove Mama crazy being a trucker's wife. The part she couldn't handle was being alone. I guess she needed more to hold than just a telephone. Papa called Mama each and every night just to ask her how she was and if the kids were all right. Mama would wait for that call to come in. When Daddy'd hang up, she was gone again. Mama was a heart out to shine. Papa was a good looking jealous guy. Papa loved Mama.
Okay, we're back with you on a Friday afternoon. Rob Brown along with Gordon Ford here on Sidelines. That was a really cool interview with former Georgia quarterback Buck Blue, the 1980 national champions. Also played some baseball here in Memphis with the Memphis Chicks. And as Gordon pointed out, investigative reporter, I need to get him one of those old hats with a card that says press sticking out of it. Lindy Infante, his old coach, who just
can't believe he
passed away.
I didn't know he died.
Yeah, I didn't either. But he was one of the most innovative offensive minds ever.
And every time he had a head job, he would win. And then all of a sudden, his best players would get hurt. He'd lose and get fired. He was the coach of the Packers. I don't know if you remember that or not. But another thing, too, we want to send a congratulations out to Keith Carter, who is no longer interim athletic director at Ole Miss. And right now, he is the guy. And Keith told me he'd do the show. I saw him about a week ago, wished him well, told him he needs to get the job. And he said, don't worry, brother, I'm getting it. So, that's really good.
Well, talk about that real quick, because Ole Miss really needs an AD to come in there and pull everybody together. But Matt Luke's two assistants, his coordinators, Rich Rodriguez with the offense, Mike McIntyre with the defense, I think they're doing a really good job. They're changing the personality of the football team / program / culture
to toughness.
Yeah, that's it.
And you got John Rice Plumlee. He doesn't throw the ball very well. And they said when he was in high school, he slung it around, threw for like 4,000 yards one year or something crazy, and that he was slinging the ball around, and that they're going to take time and work with him in the offseason, which is really going to be hard, Rob, because he's playing baseball too, and he's a heck of a baseball player. And, a lot of people don't know if Corrales will still be around. He'll probably try to go through spring practice. But, what's weird is everybody's entering the transfer portal, Rob. I mean, you wake up one morning and some guy could be starting and then gets ticked off, and then he's in the transfer portal. And I'm not so sold on this transfer portal right now. I mean, I think there's some good about it, but there's more bad.
I think it's I say this every time I'm on the radio, it's the athletic version of a website like LinkedIn, a bunch of unhappy people who don't like their jobs that get together. And on average, these kids probably transfer after they leave their original school 2 or 3 more times.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You've pointed that out many times. That does happen. And you know what that tells me? They're not going to stick it out anywhere.
That's right. And look, let's talk about what's going on in the SEC right now. And we did a podcast last night, Tommy Christenberry and I did, about the Arkansas coaching. We did the Wednesday night Arkansas coaching search, all right? Who do you go get? There are a lot of names being bandied around. Obviously, Mike Norvell here at Memphis. And there are the Gus Malzahn rumors will always be out there. But you know who's been over there shamelessly politicking for the job in Little Rock?
Houston Nutt.
Can you believe that? Come on now. I want to be that coach up there in Arkansas. Gotta go be Gold Train Houston Nutt.
All I can tell you is that he won there. Not consistently, but he did go to the SEC championship 3 times.
Went twice. Yeah.
In
19, yeah.
But all I can say is he always had him in the thick of things. Darren McFadden, he had guys like that. He knows that area. And, sometimes a guy may go get fired somewhere else, like the guy that's at Utah State now. Gary, I'm trying to think of his name. He went to Wisconsin. Then
Gary Anderson.
Yeah. And then for whatever reason, God knows, he took the Oregon State job.
Oh, yeah.
And, they were on him at Wisconsin. He took the Oregon State job. He's been fired there. He's back at Utah State now as the head coach and winning again. Sometimes, maybe, you need to go out and fail and come back. You never know.
Well, one thing about Houston Nutt is he's a lot like Terry Bowden. He got too involved in the politics and all the day-to-day drama, the lunchroom drama with a bunch of high school girls, And that's what got him in trouble at Arkansas. He came to Ole Miss. Coach O had recruited really well at Ole Miss. 19 players.
Well, with his players.
That's right.
When his came in, they were terrible.
Yeah, when 19 of Coach O's players that he recruited went on to play in the NFL. So he can recruit, and look what he's doing now at LSU. And he also knows how to hire assistants and get out of their way. But when you look around, everybody right now is frustrated. They want a new coach. They think that every coach out there wants to come to their school because they've got money. Well, everybody has money, Gordon.
That's true. But the biggest thing of all there, you have to make the right choice. You can't go out and do something stupid like hire Charlie Strong or Willie Taggart or, Chad Morris. You can't go make a complete boo-boo. You got to get someone. And I would say, hey, if Tuberville wasn't running for senator, he would be really good for that job. But you got to get someone that knows the SEC, knows how to recruit, and understands the type of players you need to win in this league. And when Chad Morris was there, and I know we bashed him every week, the one thing about Chad, the players didn't like him, and they quit on him. And let's see what they do for Barry Lundy this week. I mean, there's no way they're going to beat LSU, but at least they may hang in there. Chad would get beat about 80-10.
I think there was a lot of resentment on the part of the Arkansas football players over Brent Bielema being fired because he was close to his players. He did hang out with them a good bit from what I understand. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I always remember when I was living down in Columbus, Georgia, I'd go into a restaurant or a bar or anything, and you'd see a bunch of Rangers over in the corner playing quarters or chugging pitchers, and an officer would walk in and say, "Aren't you going to go over there?" And he'd go, "Absolutely not. I don't hang out with these guys. I mean, I'm pushing them hard enough. I don't play politics," and they would just disappear. You got to be careful about that because you can't play favorites. You got to be agnostic when it comes to playing time. You can't be persuaded by the politics. But no, Houston that did have him, and they beat LSU in overtime in 2007. 50-49 or something. And Baton Rouge. But I remember I was in Cache, Arkansas.
The White Reverend. Remember that? And everybody was going nuts. And, he came to Ole Miss. I think he got lazy at Ole Miss. And then sometimes maybe taking some time off, Rob, and looking back and going, man, I screwed up by doing this. I won't do that ever again if I get. Who knows?
Well, there's one thing for sure.
I heard Petrino was skirting around there too, and I don't think he has a chance.
Yeah, he might be in the mix. But Houston, from Little Rock, Arkansas Razorback family, but he didn't last all that long at Arkansas. He transferred. He finished at Oklahoma State.
He did. He got benched for Ron Calcagney. I know you remember that.
Yeah. And
he got benched for Ron Calcagney. He went over there, and I'm trying to think of the quarterback that beat him out at Oklahoma State, but he was the backup there. And he played some.
Yeah, Oklahoma State. Look at the rise of the Oklahoma State football program, and just it corresponds directly with T. Boone Pickens, who passed away about a month ago, rest his soul, at 91 years of age, a multi-billionaire. Started out his freshman year, by the way, at Texas A&M. Didn't like it, transferred to Oklahoma State, but close to $300 million he's given them in the last 11 years. And now with T. Boone Pickens dying, I can't wait to I'd love to be looking at the 706, the estate tax return. What's he going to leave to Oklahoma State? But they've only had maybe 6 or 7 double-digit win seasons in their history, and I think 4 or 5 of them have occurred in the last 11 years. Money talks out there at Oklahoma State, but Oklahoma still walks.
Philip Marshall.
Okay. All right. We're going to be joined now by Philip Marshall, a longtime veteran sports writer in the state of Alabama, and his father, also one of the great sports writers in Alabama, been covering college football, I'd say, Philip, close to 45 or 50 years, and you currently work for Auburn Undercover. You've got a great read on what's going on, not just at Auburn, but in the SEC and college football, and a lot of crazy rumors, and people are throwing money and buyouts and stuff going around. You are the writer in residence, the calming presence. So kind of calm us down and tell us what you think's happening at Auburn and just around the SEC and what you think will happen. And thanks for joining us.
Well, I can speak to Auburn. I don't know how well I can speak to around the SEC, but I think that despite a lot of unhappy folks, that Gus Malzahn is probably safe. That could conceivably change if they were to to lose to Alabama and look bad doing it. I don't expect that to happen, and I don't expect them to look bad, and I don't expect anything to change going forward to next year. But that's not going to change that there is there are a lot of unhappy folks. Auburn is, despite beating Georgia and Alabama both when they were number one 2 years ago, they've not fared well against the teams you need to fare well against to be embraced at Auburn. And until that changes, I'm afraid we're going to be going through this in a lot of Decembers. And but for now, it would appear to be that the guest is safe as a 2020, barring something changing next week.
You know, this is Gordon Ford, by the way. It seems to be, that Gus is on the hot seat constantly. And what's happened here is, with a lot of these coaches, you've given these contracts where, you can't get out of it. And it's just, look at Arkansas. They're paying two different coaches now who they fired and got nothing out of it.
Well, there's no question that the buyout situation that and you have to put that at the feet of college presidents all over the country, that they have put themselves in this position. When Gus 2 years ago, after those two wins over Georgia and Alabama, got a 7-year, $49 million contract with 75% of it guaranteed, and people were appalled, and they should have been. There was no reason to make that kind of commitment. And so now, if he had a reasonable buyout, would he still be here? I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that where it would be now would be, I think, like $22 million, excuse me, to buy him out. It makes it a whole lot harder to do. Not impossible, but a lot harder. And like you mentioned, Arkansas, Chad Morris, who I think is a good coach, but took over a really impossible situation, and then didn't show any signs of getting any better. But he fails pretty spectacularly and gets $10 million for his trouble. So I guess that's pretty good work if you can do it. It's I think if college presidents don't figure out a way to get it under control, that it really threatens to damage the game. You just start throwing. I think that's part of the reason why you're hearing increased clamoring for players to get a bigger cut, because all these coaches are getting wealthy, and even ones that fall flat on their faces are getting wealthy. And but it's I don't know what you do about it. It's not legal for all the presidents to get together and say we're not going to do it anymore. That would be violating labor law, and I think somebody at some very prominent school, AD president, some very prominent school, is going to just have to say at some point, we're just not doing it anymore. And coaches get paid a whole lot of money. If you're making $7, $8, $9, $10 million a year, I don't know why you're in such dire need of security. But I don't understand what any of that's like. That's a little bit more than what 24/7 Sports pays me. So, until somebody shows the courage to say we're not doing it anymore, I guess it's going to keep happening. And the whole show is college athletics is really in a strange place. With the whole name, image, and likeness thing, and all those things, that it's hard to know what it's going to look like a few years from now, really, all the way around.
Phil, one of the things is these buyouts, like we just talked about. And then how can an AD get in there and hire a guy and pay him that type of money and not get fired over stuff like this? You've got to come out with, you've got to come up with, let's just say Chad Morris. You're already paying Brett Bielema $11 million. That's right there, $21 million for people who didn't get the job done, consistently getting paid, and somebody's got to cut you not to coach and come up with the money.
Well, I would say this.
That's ridiculous. I'd be raising Cain if my AD had hired this guy, and I'm having to watch this, and they're paying him $11 million.
Contracts like that don't get done without the president signing off on it.
Well, they need to be fired too.
In Auburn's case, Jay Jacobs had already announced he was leaving as AD and had absolutely nothing to do with the contract that was given to Gus Malzahn. It was former President Stephen Leath, who also got fired last summer, and Raymond Harbert, who is a member of the board of trustees and is close together. That's the two people who were driving forces behind that. And not many people agreed with it, but it was done, and you certainly can't blame whoever the coach is, Gus, Chad Morris.
No, it's the money. I take it.
Can't blame the coach. If you're gonna put that contract in front of me, I'm gonna sign it. But sooner or later, somebody's got to say, no, we're not gonna do that. And if that means you got to leave, then good luck to you. But we'll find somebody else that'll be willing to come here and work for $7 million a year.
Philip, you've been covering football a long time, and your dad, and you grew up with Coach Jordan, Coach Bryant. You've seen so much change over the years. In the late 60s, a lot of people were ready to run the Bear out of Tuscaloosa, and he went off and changed and installed the wishbone in the spring of '71. How would he be treated in today's world of social media and 24/7 coverage? And in my opinion, a lot of the so-called journalists, and you are a true journalist, but a lot of people today, it's not get it right, it's get it first and don't worry about it and whatever happens. You just want to be out in front of everybody. But how would coaches like him and Coach Jordan, who would smoke cigarettes on the sidelines during games, and how would they fare in today's world?
Well, it would certainly be different, but I will say about Bryant, when he rough spot there in the late 60s, he had already won 2 national championships in the previous, 8 or 9 years. So it was, even today, he would probably survive that. But for sure, I mean, it's the anonymity of social media, and people can get on there and be as vile and as mean-spirited as they want to be. And I mean, I read a story a couple of days ago about the Penn State quarterback getting death threat at the Minnesota game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just really sad. Bo Nix has taken a terrible beating on social media this year. When he's a true freshman that's got him in a pretty decent place. But yet, he's not, there are times when he plays like a freshman and he's been beat up terribly. And I don't understand the mindset of people who do that, other than if college football or any sport. But college football, if it affects your happiness and well-being to that extent that you feel the need to do that, you probably really should be looking for something else, some other pastime, because in the great scheme of things in the world, who wins the Iron Bowl next Saturday is not real high on the list of what's important.
Yeah, and Philip, you've been around a lot of the what they call the power brokers in college football at Auburn and Alabama, and you know who they are at most of the elite programs in the country. I just don't think that there are a lot of people lining up, and I don't care if they're worth billions of dollars, to pay off a $27 million buyout to a coach, be it Gus Malzahn or any other coach. Yet Florida State just did it for almost $18 million. The guys that have that kind of money are a lot shrewder than that, and they don't do it. But when you lock people in and you have to pay them, I heard you the other day. I think you made a great comment. Don't make it so you can't fire the coach. I mean, pay him well, but call the bluff. Talked about that, calling the bluff on these agents and saying, okay, go for it. Go somewhere else. We'll find another coach.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's it. The people at Auburn who tried to talk sense into the people who were about to do this said, look, pay him whatever you want. Pay him $10 million a year if you want to. But put a buyout on there, it just means you can't fire the guy. But they did, and could Auburn pay that off? Yeah, they could pay it if they deemed it necessary. And I don't know whether how much of it would come from boosters or whatever. But if you're right about people, in another time years ago when there was a coaching controversy going on, and I was talking to a member of a board of trustees, and I said, well, look, everything I hear is that there's people out there lined up ready to put up money. We're not anywhere near the amount of money we are now. They're ready to put up the money to buy out his contract. And he said, yeah, that's interesting. He said, I hear the same thing. He said, but he said, they say that right up until the moment you tell them to write a check. He said, and then all of a sudden that goes a little bit better. And maybe he needs to get another year. So it's you're right. Wealthy people, for the most part, didn't get wealthy by just putting their money around. And but there are also people that are so wealthy that it's not a big deal. And some of those people are involved in college football. I mean, it looked like Florida State raised $20 million from boosters pretty quick to make a change. That's what they said they did. I assume that's accurate. And but it's obscene. It's obscene when you think about all the needs in this country, every country, people that are going hungry, people that are homeless, whatever. That you got football coaches who are coaching.
I know, and they're not hungry.
and making millions of dollars.
Yeah, they really are. And Philip, one last thing before we go. Look now that the coverage, there's so much information out there. I read, you're a great writer, but you're the exception, not the norm in today's world. But you also tend to grab people and say, hey, hold on a second. Look, think about what you're doing. Count to 10. When I read your columns, and you write multiple columns every week, but around the country, when you talk to your colleagues that are sports writers and all, are they faced with the same stuff, just different school name?
People, college football to a great extent runs on wealthy people donate money, and when they donate that money, they're buying influence. And anybody that thinks they're not is kidding themselves. And I don't care what school it is. Anybody that thinks somebody's giving millions of dollars to an athletic program and then saying, look, I'm just giving you this money. I don't care what you do with it. I'm just giving it to you because I like it.
Yeah, Raymond Harvard.
That's not the way it works. Raymond Harvard is an extraordinarily wealthy man.
Yeah.
Who has given, I think, over $40 million to Auburn University. Not to the athletics, but to Auburn University. And he bought a lot of influence. And that's just the way it works. And is it the best thing? No. But the business of college football, I think a lot of people maybe don't understand. The business of college football is unlike any other. It's not in business to make money. It's in business to win.
Yeah.
And so, all these facilities, this tremendous facilities building boom.
Yeah.
A very large percent of those facilities are built with borrowed money. When we say we're going to float a bond issue, some people don't really pay attention to what that is. That's just no different than going to the bank and borrowing the money.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what's happening. And to be honest with you, Auburn's Board of Trustees is hesitant to go head over heels in that direction, and that's one of the reasons why. Auburn's facilities certainly are good, but they're not the jaw-dropping thing, the stuff you see at a lot of other places, and that's part of the reason.
Yeah.
Now, what's the best way to be? I don't know. If you're thinking like a businessman, then it's to watch your debt and do all those things. But if you're thinking like, we need to do what it takes to win, and if you're in Auburn's case, we need to do what it takes to keep up with Georgia and Alabama and LSU, then you're going to have to do what they do, because you're not going to spend less and win more. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, you're right. You're not going to. It does not happen. Philip, check Philip out Auburn undercover Philip Marshall, one of the best writers you will find anywhere. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate your kind words.
Hey, I've been reading you a long time. Great insight, and we look forward to having you back on. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more. This is Sidelines.live.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again. How long's our break?
What we're seeking is the truth. I'm just looking for a happy ending. All I'm looking for is you.
I heard, okay, when they heard Willie Taggart.
Your new kitchen looks fabulous. I couldn't have done it without the Kitchens Unlimited team. They captured my style and kept it within my budget. I just love the materials you used. Were you ever worried how it would look? No, not at all. My designer provided detailed drawings and made sure I understood everything. Their great service continues after the install. I got a custom kitchen with the exact style and details I wanted. Wow, it sounds like you're going to miss them. Not for long. They also do bathrooms. You can reach the Kitchens Unlimited team at 3550 Summer Avenue or on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
Ortho1 Sports Medicine. We don't just say we care, we show we care. At Ortho1, that's the motto we live by. We place an emphasis on seeing our patients as quickly as possible without sacrificing quality in the care that each patient deserves. Our experienced orthopedic physicians, all of whom are surgeons, display a genuine interest in your personal health. The concern for your time and a friendly, skilled staff are what you can expect every time you visit one of our 3 offices in Arlington, Collierville, and Olive Branch. Fast quality care. That's the Ortho1 difference. Check us out at ortho1.org.
If you have a crash, sit or ding, go to GE Patterson and BBG to come and body shop.
I'm an Indian outlaw, half Cherokee and Choctaw. My baby, she's a Chippewa. She's a one of a kind. All my friends call me Bear Claw. Village chicken is my pawpaw. He gets his orders from my mama. She makes him all right. You can find me in my wigwam. I'll be beating on my tom-tom. Pull out the pipe and smoke you some. And pass it around. 'Cause I'm an Indian outlaw. Half Cherokee and Choctaw. My baby, she's a Chippewa. She's a one of a kind.
All righty. Now we're on the next hour here of Sidelines, and I think we're going to take a little trip down to Birmingham and talk with one of my favorite callers I've ever heard is Phyllis, passionate Alabama fan, but a fan of college football, a fan of effort. I'm a fan of Phyllis. Phyllis, how are you?
Well, I'm fine, Rob. How about you?
Doing great. Hey, it's college football season, but Phyllis, it goes too fast.
I beg your pardon?
I'm saying it just goes too fast. College football season. Can you believe? Can you believe how far we are? I think you're hitting your phone. I think, Phyllis.
I think so. Something's happening.
Okay. All right. All right.
Let me plug this thing up, Rob. Just a second.
Okay. Yeah. I'll tell you what.
I've got some speaker. I can
Okay.
talk while I'm doing this.
All right, Phyllis, Alabama, obviously not much of a game tomorrow, a warm-up before they get ready for the Iron Bowl next week against Auburn. But Gordon and I both, we're going to ask you the same question, and I'll just beat him to the punch. Tua gets hurt last week in the Mississippi State game, and that's the risk you take when you play college football. But, you're hitting the button here. We may want to get you to call back if you need to.
Let me call you back on my landline.
Okay, all right, that'll be fine.
Okay.
All right, but Gordon, last week a lot of people were questioning what is Tua doing in the game, and then he gets hurt. That can happen on any play.
That's true, and I saw it. I mean, he got wrapped up pretty good. But you know what? I mean, they beat Mississippi State a lot worse than that score was. I don't know if you watched any of that game. And this is another team right here that they've got some coaching issues. You know it?
Yeah, I tell you what, Mississippi State is a team that really doesn't have an identity.
No.
And Joe Moorhead, I don't know what he wants to do. He just doesn't look like he's happy in Starkville. You don't have to be from the South to coach at Mississippi State. It sure helps. You know, you don't have to like cold weather to live in the Arctic Circle, but it helps to have some clothes for it. But that was a tough one. But Mississippi State is crazy. It's sort of fallen off the radar here this year. But let's go back now.
Mullen, they were really good.
Oh.
And, now they're just,
Dan Mullen had them winning the best run over his 9 years in school history. I mean, every year they were good. Phyllis, we got you back with us, and let's talk a little about Tua's injury last week. A lot of people coming out, and some of them have agendas. I've heard some really rotten people say some things. I don't think Nick Saban would ever intentionally, and I don't have to speak for him, but put a player out there that can get hurt. That's just part of football. You can get hurt getting off the team bus. And, you wonder how many backup quarterbacks are you going to have, Gordon, with the transfer portal? Mac Jones, who's from Jacksonville, Florida, the Bowles School. He's the backup quarterback for Alabama. He played against Arkansas, I think, earlier this season. He'll be ready tomorrow, and he'll get a game under his belt. They'll play Tua's younger brother, who is a true freshman. I also think that, it won't surprise me, that Tua's brother will be a very, very good quarterback. He came in as a 4-star. But whoever Alabama has is going to be prepared. When have you not seen Alabama with a quarterback? Even when Lane Kiffin was there, 14, 15, and 16, they had Blake Sims was converted from quarterback to running back,
Coker,
to quarterback.
Who was not very good.
Jughead Coker was not great. And then in 2016, Jalen Hurts came in January as a true freshman and took Alabama to the national championship game against Clemson. That's just the Saban system/process. I would expect nothing less.
No doubt. And, like I said, I mean, Steve Sarkisian, he's a very good quarterback coach, and I think he'll have them ready.
Well, he had the misfortune of having to run the offense. Lane Kiffin left in 2014 in 2016 and for the head coaching job, and he did not coach in the national championship. Sarkisian is a very good coach. He came back from the Atlanta Falcons. Excellent coach, knows what he's doing. Bottom line, it's Alabama. Everybody's acting like Alabama has just no talent. They're terrible. I just checked. They've lost one game to the best team in the country, LSU.
Barely. It almost brought them back. I mean, that pass Tua threw at the end was incredible. And, I mean, they got back in that game. But put it this way, LSU was just simply better and better athletically than they were.
The LSU's got the best running back on any team in the SEC, Clyde Edward-Helaire from Baton Rouge. And I think Jimmy Ott was on from ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge. He knows LSU better than anybody we have. Talked about the relationship that Clyde Edward had with Les Miles, his son, and that's how he ended up at LSU. He's 5'7", Gordon. In that Alabama game, he was running over people, okay? So we're going to go back now and talk to the most passionate Alabama fan you'll meet, Phyllis, down in Birmingham, and hope you got those technical problems worked out. They're part of the game. They're like injuries.
My landline and cell going nuts. I don't know if it's this Wi-Fi or what, but we're having rain here and some weather issues, a little bit of wind. That might be what's going on. But no, speaking about the game and everything, Tua wanted to play that 2-minute drill. He wanted to be in that. He wanted time for another touchdown. He wanted time to make another play that would add to his stats. I do not blame Saban for that. I believe Saban was allowing Tua to do what Tua wanted to do, and God forbid that horrible accident happened, which it just horrified everybody, broke my heart. and everybody else's heart too. But I just don't think that we can put the blame on Saban for something that he was wishy-washy about doing. I don't think he really wanted to do that because he saw him hobbling. You know, we all did. But at the same time, Tua was like, just give me this chance. I know he was. I've got it in my gut. Just give me this chance to make one or two more plays, then I'm out of here. Second half, I'll sit the bench. I really think that's what it was about. And and it's just a sad, unfortunate, horrible thing. But on the other hand, the good Lord, he stepped in, and Tua has been told by his doctors he will make a full recovery. Now, how great is that news?
Well,
you can't get no better than that.
You can't, and they medevaced him to UAB's hospital in Birmingham. Then he ended up in Houston. But look, they've got the Andrews Orthopedic Group at St. Vincent's Hospital there in Birmingham. Exactly. Dr. Andrews, of course, trained under Dr. Jack Houston over in Columbus at the Houston Clinic, where sports medicine, for all practical purposes, started in the early 50s.
And you don't get any better than that.
No, and so those doctors, they don't care. Andrews does Auburn and Alabama's players. They fixed Bo Jackson to where he got back and played baseball. Right. And Tua had the surgery, and he looks, I mean, he was in his hospital bed. He's ready to get out. They say within 3 months he'll likely be training. Now,
that's right.
What's the mindset of this Alabama team? Tomorrow is basically what I call a CBS game, Club and Baby Seals. It'll be over with pretty early. But the playoff, Alabama's right there on the outside trying to get in, and they've been every year since the playoffs started.
Well, what they're going to have to do, Rob, is they're going to have to take that field tomorrow, not go out there trying to beat somebody to death because the team may not be as strong as Alabama, but go out there and make what stats they can tomorrow, build up their roster, build up what they need to, show that they can play, show they've got defense, they've got the offense they need. Then when they come up against Georgia, it is Georgia next, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Auburn.
Auburn, but yeah, LSU's going to be playing Georgia.
That's right.
You know, unless
that's
they collapse.
Going to be a tough game when we play Auburn.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you what our team's got to do. We got to go out there and take what we've got. If it's Mac Jones, hey, he's got to throw an arm on him. He's got a bullet for an arm.
Yeah.
He's precise when he wants to be. We got to take the quarterback that God has handed us and given to us, and we're going to have to play this game for Tua. We're going to have to go out there and say, our team's going to say, okay, if we can't do it for ourselves, let's get up the passion, let's get up the play, let's get up the stamina, and let's go out there and show Tua that we can do this for him while he is healing, and we can make him proud. Do it for Tua. Find somebody to reach in your heart and do it for, and you will be out there doing things that you didn't know that you had the strength to do. When you want to do it for somebody else, it comes naturally. It just comes right at you. And I just think do it for Tua should be the hashtag for tomorrow. I mean, against Auburn especially. And I think that Mac Jones will step up, and I think our defense will step up. And all of them, they still have this sadness, but yet this passion in them for wanting to even win out even more now because of what happened to Tua. They're going to want to do it for him. They love him. The camaraderie with him is something special. And I just think that Bama they want to shut the mouths up that's saying that they're over with, their season's over with, their dynasty's over with, their everything, their legacy is over with. They need to shut them up. And the only way to do that is get out there and show them what they have got. Because I'm going to tell you something. Back months ago, I saw something I'm not seeing now, and I know they can get it back.
Yeah, and it's going to be a wild next few weeks. And you've got several teams in contention on the outside that can play their way into the playoff. Nothing is a given. Phyllis, look, we're up against a tight break. We've got to go to Bob Kessling, the voice of the Tennessee Vols. But listen, call us back anytime. We're going to get you on a little podcast here before the Iron Bowl next week. And, you know, we got a lot of great callers out there, and you're the ones that make this show possible. That's who Gordon and I are accountable to, that and our sponsors. But, look, get through it. And I know this much as an Auburn grad. Nick Saban in Alabama will come in there. They will find a quarterback, and I think Mac Jones is going to be he'll be fine. But thanks so much for the call. Have a great weekend.
Thank you for having me. I'm humbled, and God bless all of you, and stay safe. Whatever players you are, I don't care what team you're on, stay safe, okay?
You got it.
I want the same thing happening to you.
Thank you so much.
We love you.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, nobody wants to see a player, Gordon. Anyone that cheers for a player getting hurt has got serious problems. But,
That's exactly right.
Tell you this, Rob.
Right.
Yeah,
I look at an example.
Thank you so much.
I look at
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
I look at an example of what just happened to him from a team back in the 90s, the St. Louis Rams. And Trent Green went down, Dick Vermeil's in there crying, and some unknown guy, arena guy that nobody wanted, I mean, couldn't even get on a team, and they put him in the game, and the rest is history. And you could make some arguments. He might not be. He's probably one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, Kurt Warner.
Yeah.
And when Kurt Warner came in that game, Trent Green broke his leg. Dick Vermeil's crying, we'll rally behind him. And I'll tell you what, took him to the Super Bowl. Sometimes you never know. That guy, he may have the burning fire in his heart to win the game.
Remember, Kurt Warner was bagging groceries before he got back into the NFL. All right, let's go to the Big Orange Report. Talk with Bob Kessling, the voice of the Tennessee Vols. Get an update here on Tennessee as they get ready to go up and play Missouri. And this is a big one because, hey, I'm 3 games away, guys, from winning a steamer pack of 24 crystals on my bet that Tennessee would win 8 games this year. But let's go to Bob Kessling on the Big Orange Report, brought to you by Jameson and Fisher Property and Casualty Insurance on the historic square in Covington, Tennessee. Thank you, Ed Kaiser. Go Big Orange.
All right, we're joined now by Bob Kessling, the voice of the Tennessee Vols. And, Bob, you're getting ready to go up to Missouri. Tennessee is wanting to win every game, obviously, but one more, and they're bowl eligible. And Missouri, the Vols are 1-2 up in Columbia. Missouri's defense is pretty good. They've been good at home, not so good on the road. Tennessee's won 4 of the last 5. A lot of forces going against each other. What do you think about this matchup?
Well, I think it's a Missouri team. If their quarterback hadn't got hurt and been limited, Kelly Bryant, for the last several games, who knows where Missouri would be. Their defense has been good enough to keep them in most games, and they've had low-scoring games. And their offense just has not been able to put it in the end zone. They're one of the worst teams in the SEC in red zone offense. So that takes you back to Tennessee, where, you know, while the Tennessee's been winning, you know, the offense hasn't exactly been a juggernaut. I mean, they've scored enough points to win, but they haven't exactly been lighting up the scoreboard. So that would get you to believe this is probably going to be a low-scoring game. So Tennessee's offense has to be efficient, take advantage of opportunities, and score when it can against a really good Missouri defense.
Yeah, Barry Odom is a really good defensive coach. Talent-wise, Tennessee they're getting a lot better. I've watched the 2 freshman offensive tackles. Both of them came out as 5 stars in high school last year. That is incredible to be able to put 2 of those guys on the team as true freshmen. Talk about their development and what you see their future as, because they look really good to me.
Well, they both are, but they're at times play like freshmen. Darnell Wright hurt the past couple of games. I'm not even sure how much he's going to play Saturday night. But they look like SEC tackles when you see them on the practice field, when you see them talking and walking in the halls and all those type of things. I mean, they look the part. So, there are 2 guys to build around. They've got the size, they've got the strength. They just need experience and, another year in the weight room, and I think they're really going to be impressive and imposing. So those are 2 guys to build around, and that's a pretty good building block for you.
And Tennessee's always had great skill players, running backs, receivers, and Ty Chandler is a good one, but Jawan Jennings is a receiver. They're really strong. The quarterback position, Gerentano's really made a great comeback from what a lot of people thought after the Alabama game. He had that unfortunate fumble down on the goal line that we'd never see him again. But this kid's a fighter. He's tough, and so has Ben Maurer and Shroud, the other quarterback. 3 quarterbacks have been playing, yet Tennessee's won 4 of the last 5. If you would talk about that development right there, because it's been huge.
Well, I never remember a situation where the coaching staff is confident and that they got 3 quarterbacks they think they can play. And it's hard to rep 2 quarterbacks in practice. Sometimes it's hard to rep 1, and now they got 3 going. I think that Jared Garantano has the experience that gives him a leg up in most of these situations. And I think they were really encouraged not only on his production in the Kentucky game, but how he got there, how he ran the offense, how he made some really great throws. His receivers, and I think it's a good point that receivers play for quarterbacks sometimes, and if they feel comfortable with the quarterback, it seems like they always make those great plays. And some of the catches that Palmer and Juwan Jennings made in the Kentucky game shows you that they got a lot of confidence in Garantano that he's going to put the ball where it's supposed to be, and then they go up and get it because they've got the size over those smaller defensive backs. Jared, a long time ago, could have packed this thing in and said, heck, I'm going in the graduate portal transfer deal. I'm going to be out of here. And he didn't do that, though. He stayed, and even though he went to the bench, which I think he admitted and Coach Pruitt admitted, it's a humbling experience for any quarterback, especially a veteran quarterback like Garantano. But he handled it with a lot of class. He handled it thinking, I've got to go out and get better. And I think the team has responded to that. It's a really good lesson in perseverance, and it's a tough life lesson. And I think it's really been a pretty remarkable story. And now if Garantano can come along and finish this deal and win the last 2 games and win a bowl game, I think he'll have a very favorable legacy here at Tennessee for what he did and what he powered through.
Yeah, and just looking back, you and I talked the day before y'all played Kentucky 2 weeks ago, down 13-3 at the half. Tennessee came out in the second half, dominated the game. But if you would talk about it, because I believe when you win close games, especially on the road, in a goal line stand, Tennessee stuffed Kentucky for a loss at the goal line, pulled the game out 17-13. I would think the takeaway from that is, hey guys, y'all understand what we're saying? You got to find excuses to win. I think they're starting to really reflect, as I've said before, Coach Pruitt's personality, because I think he is just an excellent coach, and Tennessee is going to end up loving this guy before he ever leaves.
Well, I think one thing that people sometimes forget, that when Tennessee started the season, they were without 3 starters on defense. Petulli wasn't there. Balin Buchanan wasn't there. Bryce Thompson was out. Those are 3 key players. Now, Buchanan has not returned and won't return for the rest of the season. But it seemed like the whole defense took a step up when Petulli was finally able to come back and recover from that knee injury. And he's just gotten better and better and better. And, I was talking to him this week, and he was talking about film study and how he's learned to study film. And so every time Kentucky would line up in a formation and they would go into motion or whatever, shift a running back, he knew what the play was going to be. Well, that's a big advantage for a linebacker, and it's a testament to the fact that he's learned how to study and learned how to prepare and takes the game plan. So I think Petulli should be given a lot of credit for helping this defense get things turned around, and he's been a big help to Henry Toro, who's going to be a tremendous player in this league before he gets done. So, when your best players aren't playing, it's hard for you to play at your best.
Yeah, looking at the staff,
a lot of guys healthy.
Yeah, they do, and I'm watching the defensive players. This staff for Tennessee has, I believe, a combined 10 national championships among all these coaches, and 14 conference championships, maybe 22 divisional championships. Tracy Rocker's a name that I remember from when I was in school at Auburn, and I think wherever he's been, his defensive linemen have really been the heart of the defense. Talk about what he's meant to Tennessee and what the players and what this can be for recruiting for Tennessee, because defensive linemen, it all starts up front. Offense and defense, they can take you all the way.
Well, I think that the players really respect Tracy.
But who is there? I
start,
can't even.
Looking at his resume, and players look at that and they say, "Wow, this guy,
Does he want nut back?
And he walked the walk." So they have really made a
We
great.
probably won't be on next week.
They have been able to.
Next Friday's Thanksgiving.
And again, you've got Bumpus was a converted.
Yeah, Black Friday.
Some of these guys have been playing. Greg Emerson and those guys, they've really never played. And so when the season started, I think they were got a little bit overwhelmed, I think, with the game and the intensity of the game. So it's taken them a while to adjust to it, but I think they've adjusted now. And like you said, they're playing a lot better. And I think Tracy Rocker has played a big part of that. I think they really I think he's a really good coach. He wouldn't be on the staff if he wasn't a really good coach. But I think just the way that the players responded to him tells you a lot about what they think about him and his coaching ability.
Bob, this past week on SEC Network, there was a really good feature that we watched. Jeremy Pruitt, and the Rick Barnes, Tennessee basketball, Admiral Schofield. I'm sure you saw it, where there was a Tennessee fan from over in Clarksville. I know he was in the 101st Airborne, come back from combat, and Tennessee just opened their arms and just gave him the royal treatment. And I watched Jeremy Pruitt, the way he reacted, and the way his players reacted, and the way they treated this soldier in the 101st Airborne. And I'm telling you, just as an observer, I think he's got their full attention. And if I'm a Tennessee fan, I'm starting to say, hey, man, the turning point is that Alabama game. The takeaway was, y'all can play with anybody. We've been telling you, and they're starting to really believe it. I think Tennessee is destined for some really good times.
Well, that's the hope, but I think that you're right about the Alabama game. That they did prove a lot in that game, but then you had to back it up. Then you had to go out and beat Mississippi State, beat South Carolina, knock off Kentucky. And when you build off that little spark that you got, then that's the sign of improving it. And I think the one thing that Jeremy Pruitt had talked about with his team and the lesson that they took from the Alabama game, well, you played them toe-to-toe for quarters, but you didn't finish. And you got to start learning how to finish. And I think that's the lesson they took from that. And so they come along and they finish games. They put together long drives. They make goal line stands. They've been able to do a lot of things to finish these games off, and I think that's been the next big step in this program. Now they got to finish the season. They've got to finish these last two games. They were in the exact same position last year and didn't finish. So that's the challenge that Jeremy Pruitt has thrown in front of these guys now. You have 2 games left. What are you going to do with them? And in a bowl game, if you can, have some success in the last 2 games. So I think that's been the lesson, and we'll see how much it sinks in and how they perform. But this is a far different scenario and a far different feeling around the program than it was back in September. And they've come a long way since September. But the schedule's been a lot different, too. I mean, when you got that juggernaut early in the season with Georgia, Florida, Alabama,
just give me the thumbs up when you're ready.
Pretty team in this conference. But the schedule's been a lot different, and Tennessee's taken advantage of that schedule.
All right. It really has. And, Bob, I know it's still football season.
Okay, we're going to take a break. Bob Kessling, great report on the Big Orange Report, and we'll have him on again, hopefully many, many more times in the future. Again, Tennessee's going to go up and play Missouri in Columbia tomorrow, and a huge game for Tennessee because they want to get bowl eligible, and then if they win this game, then come back and beat Vandy, who they've lost to 3 of the last 4 years. We're going to take a quick break here, Sidelines Live. That Big Orange Report is brought to you by Jamison & Fisher Property and Casualty Insurance, located on the historic square in Covington, Tennessee. There ain't none better Ed Kaiser and his team will take care of you and get you fixed up. And they're a proud sponsor of this Big Orange Report. We'll be right back. Sidelines.live. Tommy Tuberville will be up next. We're going to talk a little about that Arkansas coaching search and college football. Be right back.
But there has to be a name.
Since 1907, one name has remained at the top in the Mid-South when it comes to property and casualty insurance: Jameson and Fisher. Located on the historic square in Covington, Tennessee, CEO Ed Kaiser, a former president and active member of the Insurers of Tennessee, and his team are proud sponsors of the Big Orange Report. Call, email, or stop by for home, auto, RV.
We got Ortho 1 and then Gaddis.
Any of your property and casualty needs, or check them out on the website at jamesonandfisher.com. Ortho 1 Sports Medicine. We don't just say we care, we show we care. At Ortho 1, that's the motto we live by. We place an emphasis on seeing our patients as quickly as possible without sacrificing quality in the care that each patient deserves. Our experienced orthopedic physicians, all of whom are surgeons, display a genuine interest in your personal health, a concern for your time, and a friendly, skilled staff are what you can expect every time you visit one of our 3 offices in Arlington, Collierville, and Olive Branch. Fast quality care. That's the Ortho 1 difference. Check us out at ortho1.org.
You know what my man cave needs?
What's that, Rob?
A giant screen TV with surround sound.
You should go to gaddishome.com.
That's right. They can do all of this without costing us a fortune. They can also put in the security cameras and outdoor lighting you've been wanting.
Tuberville's on hold.
What are you waiting for?
Hey, check them out at gaddishome.com or on our website, sidelines.live. That's Gaddis Home Innovation.
I've had a large amount pass, but a smile and a couple beautiful girls tell me.
All right, you can tell we are in the Deep South, and we're going to go a little deeper in the South and talk with Tommy Tuberville, former head football coach at Ole Miss and Auburn and Texas Tech, Cincinnati, a native of Camden, Arkansas, and I think he knows a thing or two about calling the Hogs. They're probably some of the fondest memories he had as a young boy going up to Little Rock and Fayetteville. And Coach, thanks for joining us. And how's the campaign for U.S. Senate going in Alabama?
You know, it's going good. I'm just crisscrossing the state, shaking hands, taking pictures, talking about, how our country's in trouble, and we got to get it back. We got to gain control of it because we've lost control of it to the swamp. President Trump's trying to fight him off, but he needs some help. I want to go help him.
We're ready for it, and it's a lot like recruiting, isn't it?
It is recruiting on steroids. You know, you have to get about 300,000 votes to win over here, so the primaries. So we're beating the bushes and shaking hands, and everybody knows me over here. I just got to let them know I'm going to go help them.
Coach, this morning I'm up and I turn on Fox News and Trump is on there this morning. It was an incredible hour of listening to him. And the funniest thing is he called Mayor Pete Alfred E. Newman. And I was sitting there going, I never thought of that.
Yeah, I tell you, he got a name for all of them. You know, I got to get a name for all the guys I'm running against. It's comical. You know, I'm an outsider, as President Trump is, and man, you got to fight all these establishment people just to get your foot in the door. And everybody asks, why did you vote for President Trump? I said, I voted for him for one reason. He doesn't need their dang money. He's not going to go up there and take money, steal from the American people. And man, he's got them all shook up. That's swamp sour cream. But, I like his name, so Pocahontas and all of them.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot of fun. You know, Coach, one thing I've always liked about you is you don't have a filter. You ask a question, you're going to give an honest answer. And you had a great administrative assistant for a long time, Andy Lutz, that helped you out. And wherever you've been, you've surrounded yourself with great people. That's the key to being successful, whether it's as a U.S. Senator, President, and as a coach. Right now, Tommy Christenberry, former Arkansas Razorback, had him on a podcast last night, and he played. His roommates were Keith Burns and Billy Ray Smith when he was at Arkansas, played 78 through 81 for Lou Holtz. Again, you were young enough. You probably remember those times. The running hogs. We're talking a lot during the break just now, Gordon and me, and Audrey and Shane and everybody else. The Arkansas coaching search. And I got to just say this. If I were Arkansas and you were not running for the Senate, I would come to you and say, Coach, will you come up here and help us right this Razorback ship?
Oh, I'd have done it for free. I was such a fan years ago, and of course, got a lot of family there. And now I'm over into, as a coach, you move around, but they've got to find the right guy. That these athletic directors have. Number one, they don't know coaches like they should, and that used to you didn't have this problem because you had ex-coaches were the athletic directors, and they knew coaches, they knew how to manage them once they hired them. And now these athletic directors hire these coaches, and they just hire them, and then they run, hide in their office, and they keep looking out and see if they won enough games where they don't have to hire another one. And instead of going and helping them, they need encouragement, and that's the reason coaches were so good athletic directors. But times have changed. But I hope they get the right person, because you have too many in a row that set you back. Man, that hole gets deeper and deeper.
You know what? You look at that job, though. They are right now, what are they paying? $22 million for people that failed. And if they go out and screw it up again, they're going to be so far in the hole, it's unbelievable. And the thing is around here, you're hearing Mike Leach, of course, his name's been mentioned. Mike Norvell. If I was Mike Norvell, I don't think I would touch that job. But you need some guy that's going to come in there, and you cannot screw this up, and make them better and make the right decision. You're right. These athletic directors, all they're doing is the presidents and all putting these contracts together for these guys that can't coach or not up to par, and paying them a lot of money to be fired and hurting the school. There's no way I would have hired Chad Morris for that job. Brett Bielema, I could understand that. He won at Wisconsin, and they thought he would change. And as you said on prior programs, he didn't know what type player he needed to win the SEC. So right now, is there a name out there that you would say, man, maybe he'd be a good fit for this job?
Yeah, there'd be a couple. If I was looking, the criteria that I would have, number one, you can't hire an assistant. You got to hire somebody that knows how to be a head coach. Head coaching is not coaching. Head coaching is herding cats and getting people in the right spots and hiring the right people in the right spots for recruiting. And then you got to be a salesman. You have, and even more now with the situation they're in, they have got to sell themselves to the high school coaches in the state of Arkansas. Forget about the other places. You got to start at home, because you're going to get 8 to 10 there, but you got to get the right ones. And those coaches are the ones that sell you on the fact that, Coach, this guy can play. And you got to be able to trust those guys. And then you got to build that relationship. So there's got to be a huge factor in terms of hiring a head coach that knows the SEC, that understands the type of player you got to get. And then you got to tell everybody, listen, if I'm coming, get the heck out of my way. It's going to take a while. You got it screwed up. I'll get it back. It ain't going to happen overnight. Just get out of the way and let's promote the heck out of it. And that's what you got to do.
All right, you've been mentioning that. Just if you can, just throw a name out there, somebody that you think could possibly do something like that.
Oh, man. It's just hard. I said last week, Mike Norvell is a guy that hits the criteria to some degree. He's been a head coach. He's won at Memphis. He knows how to recruit. The problem is, you go to that level, and his learning curve is going to be a couple of years just to learn how to be a head coach in that league. It doesn't happen overnight. So you hire Mike, And he's not saying this to, to be derogatory, but it's like hiring a big assistant because, that's just what it is. I mean, it's not an SEC job, but he's learned, he's been through the ropes and understands it. Last year, Tennessee went after a very unknown in terms of Jeremy Pruitt. And he's in the very same situation Arkansas is in. You gotta be patient. And people have to learn that, but you don't get yourself in a financial bind. You can get a good coach for $1.5, $2 million. If they don't want to come, don't hire them. And so, don't give those big long buyouts. I mean, to give the guys that they gave that much money in buyouts is embarrassing, and that just shows the ignorance of athletic directors.
No, you're right. I mean, we've been sitting here talking about that. You're right. These guys, look at Florida State. The guy that was there before hired him because Florida State was going to fire him. He hires Willie Taggart, who has really done nothing, and Florida State is now $17 million in the hole because of this. But, I'm thinking about a guy that seems to be doing a good job. He's grown on the job. And I want your opinion. Luke Fickell. I mean, he's a guy that they play hard-nosed, they win. And you were at Cincinnati, and he's always said that, heck, 5 miles away he can get players. What do you think about somebody like him?
He would be fine. The only problem is, he did take over for me, and he's won some games. You got to find out if they can recruit their players. This is last year. He's pretty much playing with my guys. And I didn't recruit, my staff did. I mean, and I'm very proud of my staff and what they did while we were there. But the thing about him, he's not a guy that's been in the SEC. He doesn't know that. He doesn't understand that. And he's not from Arkansas. He's not from. You really don't have to be from Arkansas, but to me, you
got to know it. Yeah.
They need to be from Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma. One of those places to where they understand the culture and understand the high school football and understand the people and what they want. People don't realize the passion that the Arkansas Razorbacks have for their football program. It is the number one thing in the state, and that's been forgotten from people coming in, like the athletic directors that weren't from Arkansas. They didn't understand the culture, and they're running people off, and you can't do that.
Coach, I want to throw a name out there that was our mutual friend Barry Blackburn, one of the favorite people he ever met. One of your former assistants who is so loved still at Auburn and at Kentucky now, and you know who I'm talking about, Eddie Grant. What about him? Because he is great recruiter, great coach, incredible person.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to go get a guy like that, here's what they do. You sit down, you visit with him about it. Of course, I'd help him much as I could. Understanding the league, of course, I raised Eddie in coaching. He worked for me for 16, 17 years.
Yeah, he did.
He'd be a good choice if you're going to take a young guy and you bring him in. If I was athletic director and I was going to hire somebody from that grid of coordinators, he knows what he's doing. He knows the conference, and you say, Eddie, I'm going to give you a 5-year contract. It's going to be $1 million the first year, $1.5 the second, $2 million the next year. You got to get yourself back out of debt. And you don't cut on coaching, but I just don't know who they're going to hire other than somebody like Eddie Grant.
Yeah.
That you're going to get a good solid that knows how to set a program up. I mean, that's what if you're looking at names, you brought one up, Mike Leach. I mean, there's no way you can bring Mike Leach in there in the SEC. Never been there. Never done that. I mean, he throws it ever down. You can't find the type of players to run that kind of offense. And I like Mike. I took over for him at Texas Tech, but it's a very different situation. And to win in the SEC, you don't throw the ball 70 times a game. You do, you ain't gonna last long.
Coach, Arkansas has a lot of wealthy boosters. The Jerry Jones, Warren Stevens, the J.B. Hunt trucking family, the Waltons, the Tyson Foods people. What about, let's say that hopefully you're going to be a U.S. Senator, but if you are not, and somehow, let's say if you were going to be the coach at Arkansas, would you think it would be wise to put an advisory group together of people like Butch Davis, Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer, people that have grown up in Arkansas, coached at other places, and can tell you all the good, the bad, and everything in between about how to coach against Arkansas, how to coach for Arkansas. But get some dadgum people in there, like you said, that it really hurts, like a kick in the groin when the Razorbacks lose, because living in Memphis, and Coach, we are a little over 12 hours and 36 minutes from shooting time for the opening day of duck season in Arkansas. Not that anybody cares, but it's a pretty big deal to me. And I love to spend time over there. Well, I love these towns. Look, Craig's Barbecue, Duval's Bluff, Arkansas. You go in there tomorrow, opening day of duck season, there's going to be two things they're talking about. Ducks and hogs, or hogs and ducks. You go to Max Prairie Wings in Stuttgart. You go to Clarendon. You know these towns, Coach. You grew up over there. But would that make sense, or would that be too many, egos and too many smart people in one room? But it just seems that so many great Razorbacks have left the state. At least I would try to bring a bunch of the smart ones like you. I know you're in a Senate race, but we all know how good of a coach you are. You're a program builder. It would make sense, I would think, for Arkansas to connect with some people that know about football and know Arkansas.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about that. I don't think you get an advisory committee. I think you get a coach in there and you use all the assets you can use to get to know the place. If you don't understand it, that's the biggest thing about a head coach in the SEC. You got to understand the league. You got to understand the type of players it's going to take to win, and then you got to understand your job, and then you got to understand the type of players it's going to take, and the areas that you can go to get people to come to your university. I mean, there's a lot of factors in there that you got to roll into one. It is a hard job being a college football head coach. It is a disaster if you hire the wrong one. And you've seen that happen at several places. I mean, if it don't fit, I mean, you have wasted. It really sets you back. For every year that you lose, it sets you back 2 years. It's hard to regain it. It's going to be whoever takes the job at Arkansas is getting ready to have a lot of growing pains, but you got to have a lot of people behind you, and that's the reason you like you said, you have a group of people that this coach can call and lean on, and hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? But you don't need people directing you. You really don't. You need to be your own person.
Coach, after a game, when you were, let's say, at Auburn, and you come out of the locker room after the game, you've had to deal with all the media, the players' families. There's a lot when you walk out of Jordan-Hare or Vaught, Hemingway, wherever you are. You get in that car with the state troopers, especially after a loss in a game like for Auburn against, say, Georgia or Alabama or LSU. Do you feel the pressure? Do you listen, or do you just totally block it out? Because you just don't seem to get rattled.
Well, the biggest thing in the world is everybody's got an ego. And when you lose, it crushes you. But you got to understand, you got to be able to handle it, because your fans can't handle it. But you got to handle it, because if you let it bother you too much, it continues to go on to the next week. So you got to be able to, forget 1 week, win or lose, and go to the next one. And I think that's one of the most important things you learn being a head coach. Because say you lose a game, then you walk in that office on Sunday and everybody's looking around, not talking, down. But if you let it carry over to another week, then you got big problems. The same thing if you win. I mean, you got to forget that win and go on and start preparing on that Sunday for the next week. So the guy that does all that is a head coach. He's responsible for that. And that is one of the biggest responsibilities is when that game's over, you enjoy it for a couple of hours with your coaches or assistants or your family, and you got to go. And if you let it bother you too much, it'll ruin you. You won't be able to survive as a coach.
Does it take a toll on if you're not real strong? I mean, I know some clients of mine used to see your wife Suzanne's family out at St. Michael's at Mass after games, sometimes at the 4:30 or 5 Mass on Saturday even. And they're from Indiana coming down here. I'm sure everybody feels the pressure. But I just you didn't seem to get rattled. But I like the fact that you would speak your mind. And that's what we need more of in college football, to tell some of these boosters. And God, you got to have their money. I understand that. But they've got to know their boundaries, don't they?
There's no doubt about that, and it's no different. The position I'm running for now in the country. It's all about confidence and doing things, and understand that it takes a lot of people to get the job done, not just one or two, but you got to have somebody organizing all of it.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a huge hire for Arkansas, and surely to goodness they're not going to leave it up to the athletic director. But you don't need a lot of people involved. You need to get 2 or 3 people that love Arkansas football. Bill Montgomery's, Chuck Dykas's, people that understand, that seen the good and the bad, and they understand what goes on and to win at Arkansas. And if they don't do that, if they just go out and use a search firm, which is ridiculous, that's a waste of money, then start listening to agents, you just get sold down the road, and then at the end of the day, you end up in the same position you was in.
Paying a guy $20 million. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a personality that wins for you. It's somebody that fits the job, and every job is different. So you got to find that right person that fits that job.
Well, you've been hearing this name coming up over there, and I don't understand why. Lane Kiffin, and I don't think he's the right guy for that job. He's lost some places, and he's not really killing it where he's at. And he's supposedly an offensive genius, and I don't think I've seen the genius in him. And what do you think about him? I just don't see him building that program back to where it needs to be.
No, not well. I like Lane Kiffin. We're friends. He's coached in the SEC. But I know the schools in the SEC. Right now, I think he needs to win where he's at, build his reputation, get it back where it should be. There's a lot of variables that go along with a lot of these guys. Nobody knows his things that would follow him. So, if they're looking at him, you understand what you're getting. And, he might end up doing a great job, but you want to get somebody that at a job like Arkansas that's not looking for a next step. You're not looking for somebody that's going to come there and every day they're looking to move on. Not saying that he would, but there's too many people that would use this job as a stepping stone, and that's the worst thing you can do.
Well, with what they pay, I don't see that being a stepping stone job. We'll get off of Arkansas in a minute because we have some other questions. But during the year, we've had several people we've interviewed from Arkansas over here, and all they did was talk about how good their freshmen were. To me, their team was depleted in talent. And I look at Ole Miss, who their freshmen to me are far better, making impact. And I can't really name you a guy over there that was killing it that even deserved that notoriety, because to me their players were not very good. And I think Matt Luke, being on 2 years of probation, did a lot better job than Chad Morris.
Well, they didn't give Chad Morris enough time. A year and a half's not enough time. Chad Morris got fired because of the last staff. There should have been enough players there where Chad Morris could have won at least 3, maybe 4 conference games. I don't care how bad it is.
That's what I'm saying.
So he took the fall for what happened the previous 4 years before him. I don't know with anybody. I saw them play, and the talent they had didn't. It wasn't good enough to win a conference game.
No, sir, it wasn't.
That's embarrassing. And so, unfortunately, I think Chad's a good football coach. Was he the right guy? Obviously wasn't. But the problem with that is the previous group never got to that point.
Coach, and everybody says, well, what does he care? He's going to get $11 million in a buyout, whatever. And, you've left jobs before, and, whether you got a buyout or not, I mean, you have your pride. And pain is temporary, pride is forever. If that pride is damaged or attacked, whatever, it's got to hurt. How much coaching do you actually get to do when you go from being a coordinator, successful coordinator? Like, I just look when you were at Auburn. Look at the coordinators you had on defense. John Lovett, and you replaced him with Gene Chizik, came up from Central Florida. After he left for Texas, you brought in David Gibbs, whose dad, Alex Gibbs, coached at Auburn in 1979, 80, 81. Went on to be a great coach with the Broncos offensive line. David Gibbs leaves, you go get Will Muschamp. And Will Muschamp leaves, you go find Paul Rhodes. But you had Chuck Pagano. You had names, Brent Venables. You would always have names of these, and look at them all now. They've all turned out to be super successful coaches, coordinators, head coaches, whatever. And I've asked you this before, but your mentors, Jimmy Johnson, Dennis Erickson, they taught you to know who the top guys are all over the country. So, hey, snap of a finger, you can find them.
Yeah, but you grow up in the business that them. They're your friends.
Yeah.
And and you coach against them. There's a lot to it. You and I can remember Jimmy Johnson hired this guy at University of Miami one year, and his name was Carlos Maynard, good defensive back coach. Went to the coach with us for a while. Went to Bears, Cowboys, had a good career. He's retired, and he said he's going to hire him. He never worked with him, but he recruited his son when they were at Oklahoma State. And he said, this guy can recruit. You got to remember now, about 6 to 7 guys on your staff. Their number one thing they've got to be able to do is recruit, not coach. You don't need many coaches. You need an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, an offensive line coach, and a secondary coach. Those 4 guys got to coach. Everybody else, they got to be able to recruit. And if they can't recruit, they're not going to make it. You can find all the coaches you want. It's the recruiters that you got to find, your salesmen. And so, and go the head coach. Head coach, what does he do? He organizes and hires coaches and manages coaches.
Yeah.
You don't do that much coaching, and you help recruiting.
But it seemed like no matter who the defensive coordinator was, the whole time you were at Auburn, Auburn had a great defense, and that's a tribute to you, in my opinion. But, hey, Coach, we are out of time today. Thank you so much for the call. Great luck on the campaign. And how do people follow you? Tell us one more time before you go, and we'll also say Happy Thanksgiving. We're going to try to get you on next week. I know there's a lot going on. We might do something early in the week, but how do they join your campaign and support you?
Yeah. Next week about this time, I'll be driving down to watch App State play Troy. That'll be a good game.
All right.
App State's got a good football team. But
yeah.
TommyPercentage.com. TommyPercentage.com. Go on there and check it out and see what you think.
Hey, love having you. Let's say one thing real quick before we go. Rocky's Alterations is a sponsor here for us on Sidelines. 1866 Poplar Crest Cove, right behind Mecca Eye Care Clinic on Poplar. If you're going east on Poplar, it's right before Kirby. Rocky's Alterations. Menswear, women's, they can alterate anything. They've also got great men's suits, sport coats, jackets, blazers, trousers, shirts, dress shirts, everything. Check them out on our website, Rocky's Alterations. Gordon, great show. Thanks to all of our sponsors and our callers.
I appreciate it.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
You
and hey, it's going to be here before we know it. Have a great weekend.
On tequila, got a job that gets the job done. I got a loan at the bank, it's a big one. The only place you might see my name is on the wall.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Liberty in Action, AM 1600 Radio, Lakeland, Memphis, Tennessee. I'm your host, Donna Bohannon.
I said, Gordon's in there going, that's why I switched over to this side. I'm better on my right side because I can see what's going on.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Liberty in Action. I'm your host, Donna Bohannon. We are on AM 1600 Lakeland, Memphis, United States of America, right here in Tennessee.
Hey.